Welcome to Get Moving TV. I'm Dr. Chris Lind and I serve as your host. Ventura, we've looked at different health issues around Ventura County. We brought in people from Ventura County. My wife is a musician and has a friend who motorcycles up. He invited us down for a barbecue in the North Valley. It felt pretty close to Ventura County. And there was somebody off on the side. People were talking with him at length. So I got a chance to invite up someone very near and dear to all of us who served his country in World War II, Carl Reisman. Carl's with us here today, and we were talking at the barbecue, and we started out with just what it was like to go to college way back in the 1930s and 40s. So it's pretty unusual. So, and then your career ended up in a little different place than most people too. So tell me about college, because at the time it was not something very affordable. And how did you get into college?
Well, my father, my parents saw to it that I graduated from this small school. There's only 11 grades in it, and but they saw to it that I did receive all the information, and then I went into Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech had other people who had teams, of football teams and all the others, but I was not in a school that had enough people like that. But Georgia Tech was good to me when I was there.
Well, I know the football players, you think of going to college and being big, strapping guys. So were you big, when you headed off to college, were you a big, strapping guy there?
Yes, Roy Gorey, and I can't even give you the names. You don't want me to take all that time.
Well, at Georgia Tech, we had something happening in the world as you were going to school, and for some people, interrupted their education. What was the direction that you ended up at Georgia Tech? I know your eventual career kind of started there.
Well, I did, and I had the pleasure of being able to learn how to fight, because it really was a real fight, with a sword and so forth. And it was a lot of fun, but I never struck anybody.
So there's sword fighting. I think, as we're going to learn, you ended up with a pretty mighty sword as time went by. So right about that time, the Navy needed people. Were you recruited from Georgia Tech? Were you graduating from Georgia Tech? How did you get involved with the Navy?
My brother had wanted to get in the Navy, and he couldn't because he was so colorblind. But I went in, since he couldn't get in. He has been in the Army. Since he couldn't get in the Navy, I wanted to try it. And of course, I passed it. But also, it was part of the fact that we were in such a small school. And when they said that they were only going to give out 30 commissions, and there were 112 of us that passed the physical, when they said that, I made up my mind that day that I would get a commission. And I had some other friends, and we all studied together, but we got our commissions.
Well, that's the kind of drive. I mean, you've got, I have a friend of mine whose son wanted to be a Navy Air Force, actually, pilot, and they didn't accept him. He ended up in the Navy, and he went through a whole lot with them dumping him up upside down in the water with no lights and all that. So to get into the Navy, were you old enough? Were you big enough?
I was not old enough. I was the youngest in the whole school. I learned that the day that I graduated. But I also was fortunate enough that while I had been small and a mite, and I had a nickname of being a mite because I was in that other school, and then I actually started growing my freshman year, and I grew a whole head taller where others had already grown, but I was younger also.
I know, there's kind of a height thing because they need a certain amount of physicality, but they let you in anyway, being
The
young
doctor,
and just a little guy.
the doctor, I'll never forget, he had let us sing like that. He said, I'm going to let you do that, but you got to grow. I had nothing to do with that, but I did grow a whole head taller.
And what direction did you take from there then? It was time for the World War was
No,
about to occur?
Roosevelt came down to Warm Springs, and my father knew Roosevelt. My father knew nearly just about everybody, and so Roosevelt, and they knew the governor, and so my father, having had such a brilliant school. I mean, how many people graduated cum laude from college?
Well, that's it. If you're the best, you're the best. Well, so you've met President Roosevelt. Did you get involved with any meetings with President Roosevelt? Did he?
Roosevelt, I met him.
And so I understand that maybe you helped transport him before war
We
broke
took
out.
on board ship. We took him to meet with Stalin and
Winston Churchill, the
yes,
cigar
yes.
smoker there.
And in that particular case, we were on the first ship.
Was that the Iowa?
No, not the Iowa. That's the third.
Oh, sorry, I know you.
Yeah.
How many ships did you commission in total?
3.
3 ships there.
And I served on 4. But we took Roosevelt to meet with Churchill and Stalin before the United States was at war. Now, Roosevelt wanted to have us save the Lend-Lease ships, which we were leasing them to London, to England, but we were not at war yet. But he wanted us to save them because if the Germans sank one, we lost the ship. So we had 2 destroyers with us, and 2 destroyers at the same time. Actually, there were 4 destroyers, and we had 2 launching things, one on either side in the back. And we would launch 2 pilots. One would keep us to where we were because it was not like a regular land place. The ship was moving, so we had to have someone do that, and we had the other one person watching out for German submarines. And if they saw the German submarine, they would notify us. We would tell the destroyer, one of the 2 destroyers would be with us, and they'd go over and drop bombs on them and sink them.
I look at all these young kids playing their video games and trying to get real. It's like, here you are living this. That's the real thing. Your life is in danger from these submarines if the destroyers don't destroy them, if they don't drop the bombs properly, and that's your life. That's your everyday.
But I didn't I didn't get on the submarines. We just ordered one of the submarines. Now, I did go on a submarine when they're in port, and some of my friends were on it, and I saw them. And it's amazing how much better our submarines were to live in as compared to what the Germans had. The Germans had submarines, but they were very dark everywhere else except for one area which had one wall with gold on it and so forth, and it had
The Nazi swastika on it?
the Nazi, it had that, and in German it said, the Führer leads, we follow. I went on board as a guest of one of the people to want to see this German submarines. And for some reason or another, I had the right connections, and they let me go too.
My goodness. So, did you get a chance to see Churchill and Stalin and Roosevelt interacting at all? Because it's all happening.
I saw Roosevelt.
It's all happening before World War II and all the things that we
I saw
think about
Roosevelt, and when the war was, when that one trip was back over, and when we on this board ship, we went into the past into the canal there.
Uh-huh.
We were afraid that maybe Germany had found out about Roosevelt being.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up, that's because they lit us up, and we rode them back, turn the lights out, or we'll shoot them out. And said the next day we'll be coming back out, and if you turn the lights on us, we're not going to give you another warning. So we had to get the ship out of the area, and we went out, and we went to the southern part of America,
Mm-hmm.
and they stayed there just long enough to where they had their meeting, and then we went back and picked up Roosevelt again, and Roosevelt wanted to talk to the people of our ship. And although the doctor didn't want him to do it, he did it anyway, and he took his hat off and threw it over to the doctor, and he wanted to say that a lot of us had been just people had been on the shores, but now we were pollywogs. We knew, and then we already had crossed the equator.
So here, really, the whole course of the world is, you were there. If they'd blown that ship up, and if the Germans had attacked it, if
Yes.
Roosevelt had perished, if Churchill and Stalin hadn't met.
It so happens, I think, that I was fortunate enough and willing enough to do a lot of the things which a lot of the people didn't do it, and I was the youngest.
Let's talk about kind of the you have something in your pocket that was signed. We'll get to it at the end there. You were involved in another big part. So you're right there at the beginning before World War II starts. And then you got to captain I guess command a ship. I'm not quite sure what the terminology is, where it wasn't the Emperor of Japan that went over, because that would be...
Oh, the Shigemitsu.
Uh-huh.
Shigemitsu was, he was the...
Is he a foreign minister, I think?
Yes. And he went in so that the emperor himself would not have to go over, but we would not allow any other people to come in. And the fact that they had to be picked up, and the fact that they chose me to go and get them, as I said, I was just lucky. Admiral Halsey, when I went in to see him in the captain's quarters, the words he said was, when I came in, I said, Admiral, you want to see me, Reisman? And he said, yes. The captain said, you would be a good man to get the Germans, to get the Japanese pick up the Japanese and bring them alongside. Have them alongside at 8:55 sharp. I said, aye, aye, sir. I walked out. I didn't know where they were going to be or anything else, and I had to just find out. I found out a lot. Found out, one, we needed more boats. Two, the boats had been picked up because Missouri was getting a lot of high-priced people coming in using all of our boats. So I didn't even ask the captain or anyone else. I just sent a message over to the Iowa, woke the captain up of the Iowa, said that I wanted to borrow the gig, the captain's gig, so that I could get pick up the Japanese delegation.
Yeah,
And they said, stand by. I had to wait 7 minutes. And then word came back from the captain. Permission granted to borrow the captain's gig, even though you did desert the Iowa for the Missouri. And then they ended up giving me the gig.
Well, here, you know, these are moments in our history book. Oh, yes, in the surrender of Japan, but it really wasn't. They didn't call it a surrender. They
Yes, they did.
I thought it was the peace treaty that they actually called it the surrender.
The formal surrender.
So, and we'll show this. So, this is signed by. Let's see, the Fleet Admiral of the United States Navy. Who would he be?
You'll see that MacArthur,
Yes, and
Nimitz, Halsey, and captain of the ship all signed that.
so here you are. This is when we talk about strategy and Navy strategy and brilliant minds that went into this. There you are with, let's see, Stalin, Churchill, Roosevelt. And Halsey, MacArthur, Nimitz, that's, and I see it's personally signed to you as well.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about how that day went. So now, you know, we think again, it's just a sentence in our history book.
I wasn't even aware that this was going to come out. I was just aware of what they were trying to do. And later, when they issued these things, I actually went there wearing the lieutenant's uniform. And when I got this, I said, oh, they made a mistake. They said, no, we didn't make a mistake. The papers were already in. We just didn't have time to tell you about it. So that's how I learned that I was a lieutenant commander rather than just a lieutenant. But they were really very, very friendly. And even though the top brass, it hadn't gone to the head, only one who's really let it go to the head was called MacArthur.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was known for that.
Huh?
He was known for that. It was all about MacArthur at all times.
MacArthur did something which I didn't think was right. When I was leaving the Philippines the first time, he was taking as many men as he could. But the last flight out, instead of taking more men out, he took out his furniture and left the men. And he ended up letting some of the men have to take the Bataan March. The Bataan March was there. If you dropped the Japanese, shot them. There was one of my friends was in that group. He picked up one of the people and carried him the rest of the way. He was on the Japanese ship when the prisoners were being taken to Japan. One of our submarines saw it and sank it, and I lost a dear friend.
Well, you're coming towards the end of the war. You've been in, again, one of the great moments in history. Did you stay in the Navy, or did
No, I
something else
didn't
call
stay in
out?
the Navy. My mother wanted me out of the Navy. You can't get out of the Navy that well. I was going to take a cruise every 3 years and therefore stay in the Naval Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
But my wife, not my current wife now, but my wife at that particular time did not want me to stay in the Navy. I had to wait 10 years, not go on any of the normal practice in order to get out of the Navy. Now, I like the Navy, but I also like my family.
Yes. Well, so here you are, youngest guy, little trimp who had to grow into his clothes. You've been with Churchill and Stalin and Roosevelt. You've been at the surrender of Japan. What did you do with the obvious leadership that those positions gave you? How did you, once you were out of the Navy, what kind of work did you end up doing?
I ended up going into the business that my father had started.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, I found out he was thinking of selling out his business because to a national. Later on, he told me that he thought to sell it and I would be one of the people to become the new president. I said, Dad, the new president will be the son of the president now. Don't sell the company. And I ended up talking him out of it. But
And that company, I think it was Trianum?
Trianum was later on, one of my friends wanted me to join him and become a partner, and he was immensely wealthy. And he wanted me to be a 50-50 partner with him. And I said, Josh, I can't do that. I can't afford that. He said, don't worry about it. You just tell me how much money you want to put in it and how much you want to draw down, and I'll buy another company, and you can pay me out the difference from the profits you make. So I ended up, I was going to go with him, but it turned out he had to have an operation on his, and when he had the operation on his head, turned out not good. That's when we started Trianum.
Right.
Fortunately for me, I had 3 salesmen, and I had 3 inside people, and myself heading it up. Do you know that I built that little business up to where I ended up selling it at the time when I wanted to, and then I sold it to a friend of mine who was one of the salesmen who I had geared to make a good businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And he rented it out, and he ended up selling his out. He sold it for his division was way up there in the money,
Mm-hmm.
way up there.
Was Travis Salter part of that? Is
Huh?
that Travis Salter?
Yes.
Did what?
Travis Salter? Was he part of Trianum at the time? Because I met his son. That was
Oh, well, no.
whatever, 30 years ago, and he was a young man. at the
Bob
time.
Byers is one who I sold the company to him. Bob has did very well, and then finally he sold it.
Well, so in terms of your life and the things that you've learned, can you kind of summarize it for it? Because we're coming up on towards the summary part. So, how do you see your success? What would you want to tell people how to be successful, young people how to be successful?
Well, that's easy. I just did. We gave good service. We were always honest. We told them right up front, we catch you telling you, if you make a mistake, we'll help you. But we find someone who is doing something that is lying, you'll be fired right away. We only had to fire one person all that time. But we grew from when after I sold the business and set up Bob to run it, and he ran it. I was for 5 years gave him guidance. The last sales meeting I went to before I left, we had 169 salesmen built up from 3 salesmen. But we were selling, we gave overnight service to 48 states. We did not sell to Hawaii. We couldn't do that. Alaska, we couldn't give overnight service, but we gave them 2-night service. But we gave very good service and truthful service.
Carl, thank you so much. Ventura, I want you to hear what this man has said. Sit down next to people at barbecues. For heaven's sakes, they're filled with stories. Be honest, hardworking. Ventura, really, it's time for you to get moving.